What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Gated Games Fan TV. How's the form? How's everyone keeping? It's the morning after Dublin's All-Ireland Senior Football Championship victory. Just give me a second there, actually. I just need to down some of these Kerry tears. To be fair, if you can't handle a joke, look, this probably isn't the place for you. And last year, look, I took plenty of abuse when Kerry beat Dublin from Kerry fans. So, like, if you can't take the abuse or the abuse, it wasn't even abuse, it's a joke. You know, if you can't take the joke, then this probably isn't the place for you. Obviously, a memorable day yesterday for Dublin fans. It's certainly a very tough one to take for Kerry fans, and we certainly will be getting into that in today's video. We're going to be looking at some tweets, some reaction to some of the biggest well-known GAA personalities out there, ex-players, pundits, social media influencer type people, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know what the term is nowadays. We're going to be looking at what people have said about yesterday's game because, look, there's definitely been a lot of very interesting takes about yesterday's game. I watched it back this morning and, like, definitely I think you do get a different perspective on the game when you watch it back, having been there yesterday. Like, obviously, when you're there in the game, in the moment, like you're absorbed when you watch your own county. Like, you're cheering them on, you're cheering everything on, and you do get so wrapped into it. And having watched the game back, like, there's definitely a few things that I noticed. I think, you know, James McCarthy definitely should have got a yellow card a lot earlier, and I think I can understand a lot of Kerry fans' disappointment with that decision. However, there has been a huge amount of uproar with the referee, and we will get onto that a little bit later. And I do think, having watched the game back, like, there was a few decisions that went against Kerry, but there was also a few decisions I thought went against Dublin. And to be fair to David Gough, I thought he actually had a very, very good game. He let the game flow. Should he have booked James McCarthy earlier? Yes. I've seen a lot of people saying McCarthy should have been sent off. I think that absolutely not. You know, I think that was a yellow card challenge. And look, would McCarthy have gotten a yellow further down the line had he have gotten a yellow earlier? I don't know, probably not, you know, and look, maybe he would have been more restrictive in his play. He wouldn't have been as aggressive because he would have had a yellow, and maybe it might have changed the outcome of the game. But I do think overall that there was a lot of balance, in my opinion, amongst the referee. And one thing I will say as well is that, like, I think Kerry, to be honest with you, were for large parts the better side. And I actually think Kerry were the better team overall. You know, they had a 3-point lead on two occasions. They had a 3-point lead at the start of the second half. You know, they kicked a couple of points early on to go 3 points in front. After Dublin's goal from Paddy Small, Kerry went 3 points in front again. Like, the game was there for Kerry. And I remember yesterday, like, being in that lower Hogan stand, watching it all happen and thinking, I think Kerry have this. I just don't think Dublin are going to be able to turn this around. But look, ultimately, David Clifford has come in for a lot of flack. And bizarrely enough, I had an email this morning from a Kerry supporter who said he was unsubscribing to the YouTube channel because of what I said about David Clifford. I mean, Jesus, mother of Moses. I mean, if you can't take your defeat, you might as well just go and watch tennis. Do you know what I mean? Go watch golf. I don't know, like, go watch a sport where, you know, like, you can just sit back on the couch, put your feet up, and you don't really care. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I think, like, if you watch, like, because I watched the match reaction I did in Croke Park yesterday. I watched it back this morning, and I was like, Jesus, mother of God. I was like, all I said, Kerry did not win the, like, to paraphrase a lot of what I said, I think, like, David Clifford, like, Mick Fitzsimons was lauded for a wonderful display. And look, he'd done an excellent job on Clifford. He really rattled him. It was tough for Clifford. But Clifford in the second half got away from Fitzsimons on multiple occasions. And if Clifford puts those chances over the bar, Kerry win that All-Ireland. Now, look, does that mean Clifford's a bad player? Absolutely not. Clifford is still, in my opinion, the best footballer in the country. He's still a front runner for Footballer of the Year. He might still end up winning it. Look, he's had a very difficult year, you know, for himself personally, having lost his mother and everything else. So, like, there's not, like, he is only human. People can have off days. And, you know, me saying that, like, Kerry lost the All-Ireland because of Clifford's misses does not mean necessarily that it's got to do with David Clifford. It just means his chances ultimately went wide. And had they have gone over the bar, Kerry would have won the All-Ireland. But these things happen. You know, they happen in sport. They happen in life. And to be fair to Clifford, and to be fair to Kerry, I think they didn't have enough outside of Clifford. And ultimately, in my opinion, that whole talk of, you know, if you keep Clifford out of the game, Kerry will struggle. And in the end, that is what happened, you know? So look, I think from Kerry fans' perspective, like, I've seen a lot of bashing of Clifford, even from Kerry fans as well. a lot of people going for his throat, and we will go into more detail in that. But I think personally, like, I think David Clifford, one of the greatest footballers of all time still, and he's still, he's only 24. He's going to go on and probably win multiple All-Irelands and go on and be the greatest. He had an off day yesterday, and like, you do have to highlight it, like, as someone who's there watching the game and obviously trying to cover the games and give you lads, try and give my own opinions on the games. Like, you do have to highlight it. Clifford had an off day. He had a poor day by his own standards. And look, these things happen. Jeremy Connolly in his pomp for Dublin has had off days. Conor Callahan probably hasn't looked a player he has been, he was a few years ago. And it happens. Players have off days. Colm Costello yesterday probably wasn't at his vintage best, in my opinion. And you go back down through the years, Bernard Brogan, Colm Cooper, Peter Canavan, all the greats have off days. You can't be 110% or 100% on every given occasion, because it just happens. It just happens. But yeah, look, we're going to run through some tweets. We're going to run through some reaction. We're going to be looking at what Joe Brawley have to say about the final, Philly McMahon, Bernard Brogan, Buff Egan, Smaller Fish GEA, Colin Parkinson, and a lot more as well. So, yeah, let's get into it. Right, first thing we have here is a tweet from Porkfairy, who says it is Dublin football time. It was an intense game, lacking quality first half. Dublin 9 All-Irelands in 13 seasons. Betters, Kerry's 8 All-Irelands in 12 seasons. Dublin, undisputed, greatest ever Gaelic football team. 3 Dublin players, 9 All-Ireland medals, 6 in a row All-Irelands. Dublin have all the major records in Gaelic football. Yeah, I think, you know what? I think, to be fair, Dublin were probably already the greatest football team of all time, having won 6 All-Irelands in a row. But, like, I think now, like, definitively, that there is, this team is the greatest Gaelic football team of all time, in my opinion, especially the older guard players of your Cluxtons, your Fitzsimons, James McCarthy, all these lads, like, I think they were already in that conversation. And probably the conversation over the last couple of years had been that they had slowed down, and that it's mad to think a couple of months ago or a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the end of an era, and we were talking about Dublin football's era over. And, even myself, I wasn't happy with Dublin football. I didn't think we were going in a good direction. I thought we I remember coming out of that game against Roscommon, and genuinely, I said to one of the lads, I was like, I think we are miles off winning All-Ireland. Like, I think we'd be lucky to get beyond the quarter-final. I really did. I thought we were miles off it. And that wasn't to take anything away from Roscommon. Like, I don't even think Roscommon were at their best that day. Do you know that way? Like, I think Roscommon done a lot right, but I think Roscommon should have beaten us comfortably. Like, they should have beaten us by 5 or 6 that day. And we just, in more ways than one, got out of jail to get away with the draw. Yeah, like, it's mad to think, but unbelievable, though, from a Dublin perspective. Like, even watching the lads yesterday on the Sunday game and everything else, like, just a remarkable achievement from a Dublin point of view. And 9 All-Irelands for Fitzsimons, Cluxton, and James McCarthy, like, just wow, like, immortal stuff. And will you ever see players win 9 All-Irelands again? Probably not, to be honest with you. John Duggan says here, 9 All-Irelands for McCarthy, Cluxton, and Fitzsimons is incredible. Credit to Desi Farrell for bringing Mannion and McCaffrey back and adding Pat Gilroy's counsel. Wasn't a great game, conditions didn't help, and it's almost if Dublin willed themselves to victory from 3 down. Do you know what? I think from a Dublin perspective, like, what I would say about Dublin this year is that we've won the All-Ireland in moments this year. We've won the All-Ireland through sheer moments of brilliance, sheer moments of quality. And sometimes you see this in sport with a team who maybe has had periods of dominance, and maybe the legs have clearly slowed down, and the dominance has come to an end, and teams have caught up, with a great team. But what you'll see with that great side, and it kind of reminds me a bit of Real Madrid when they won the Champions League, obviously not this year, last year. Like, they probably, like, that Real Madrid side weren't at their best in the almost majority of the games that they're played in, in the knockout stages of the Champions League. But they had players who'd been there and done it in the big moments and had sheer moments of brilliance when maybe other teams who haven't always been there didn't have those moments of brilliance. And that's what I look at with Dublin, is that Dublin just had it in the final couple of minutes. And it was the same against Monaghan and even against Mayo in the second half. And even at times this year when we've been poor against Kildare and against Roscommon, we had those players to just turn it on and do enough. And I think when you look back at Dublin's year as a whole, you'll see plenty of moments this year where we didn't play well. but we would have the individual talents and the individual players to step up in the big moments. And look, it's a huge credit to the team and a huge credit to Dessie Farrell. Ex-Meath footballer Bernard Flynn says huge credit to one man, Dessie Farrell. Hats off to him. Massive pressure on him, but he delivered in spades. It's some win for Dublin. GAA, hard luck to Kerry after a titanic battle. And yes, it's hard to believe, but David Clifford is human after all. And yeah, like firstly on Dessie Farrell, yeah, like he deserves so much credit. Like he took a lot of slack. I was certainly one of those people and quite open in saying I didn't think Dessie Farrell probably should have stayed on after last year. And there were moments throughout the league and even in the early stages of the championship where I said, I'm not sure if he's the right guy, you know, and I just thought there was a lot wrong with Dublin. And it wasn't just this year. It was a culmination of the last couple of years. It looked like the standards had dropped. It looked like, you know, we were wasting what is such a brilliant team. And that's always been the thing for me is that I've always said throughout the entirety of the season, Dublin have the talent and the players to win the All-Ireland. I never doubted that we didn't have the players. I never doubted that we didn't have the ability. I just thought management-wise, coaching-wise, we looked miles off it. And a lot of the time we just didn't look bothered. And, you know, at the end of the day, that stems to management. But look, in fairness, we got it, you know, he got it right. And I think Dessie's been quite open and saying, and from listening to a good few of his interviews, he's talked quite a bit about the fact that the championship was a really long championship and it was all about peaking at the right time. And I think in hindsight, when you look back now, I think there probably was an element of Dublin holding the cards close to their chest throughout the league and throughout the group stages, you know, saving energy and everything else and not going full throttle because that could come back to haunt us further down the line. Like you look at Mayo and even Gough and even Roscommon as well, a lot of those three sides went very strong in the league, you know, went full throttle in the group stages and everything else, but then ran out of steam as soon as it got to big knockout games. Whereas Dublin was almost the opposite. We looked in autopilot through the league. We didn't even look like we were playing. We definitely weren't playing at full potential throughout the group stages. And then as soon as it got to the knockout stages, we just clicked into gear. And I think that's the difference, in my opinion. Balls.ie has a tweet here, Pat Gilroy and Dessie Farrell. Yeah, like look, just look at that emotion. And to be fair to Pat Gilroy, like what a stroke of genius it was to bring him back into the Dublin management setup. And like we all talked about bringing the older guard back, bringing the band back together and everything else, but an absolute stroke of genius bringing Pat Gilroy back. And yeah, you could see it in Dublin's play a lot of the time this year, how well organised we were, how well coached we were defensively. And that's one thing I would always say about Dublin this year is that for as poor as we've looked in attack at times this year, especially in the early part of the year in the group stages and everything else, defensively we always look solid. And maybe not so much in the league, but certainly, you know, in the championship, you know, even against Kildare and everything else, defensively we were quite solid. So, and you have to give huge credit to Pat Gilroy to that. And to Dessie Farrell, you have to give credit to both of them. Fintan O'Toole says Dublin's closing power central to their victory, outscoring Kerry 7-2 in the final quarter. Kerry responded well to Paddy Small's goal with 3 points, but Dublin charged for the line from there. And yeah, it was the turning point. And look, it was, you know, it was level going into injury time. You know, Dublin obviously, Paddy Small kicks that point in the 73rd minute. Kerry had chances before that to possibly go in front. Like there was big moments and both sides had big chances. And look, you know, Dublin in the end nicked it, but it could have went either way. It really, really could have. And you know, it probably shows like Dublin outscored Kerry 7-2 in the final quarter and still only won by 2 points, and it was still level going into injury time. It probably shows that Kerry had it. You know, Kerry had that game not won, but within their grasp of winning on 2 occasions. At the start of the second half, they were very, very good. Dublin were really struggling. The goal from Paddy Small came against the run of play. It came from absolute, you know, Colm Callahan turns the ball over, and then we go on the attack and get the goal. But it came against the run of play. And even Kerry, to be fair, even responded well after the goal. They hit 3 points on the bounce. And to be honest, there was a moment after the goal, the hill erupted. You were getting that 2011 vibes where, okay, you know, Lee Gannon had a shot after that just went wide that nearly went over. And it felt like, you know, the place is about to erupt and Dublin were just going to take full control. But to be fair to Kerry, they even had it after that as well. It was just those missed chances in the final couple of minutes. And look, that sometimes can happen. You know, Paul Mannion had a great game yesterday, but he had a few fair bad wides as well. You know, it happens to the best of players. You know, Paul Mannion this year at times, he even said it in his speech on the Sunday game last night. Probably by his standards, didn't even have his best year playing for Dublin, you know, and this can happen. And I think, to be fair, I think the difference is Dublin had so many players to, like, Colm Costello didn't have his best display yesterday, I don't think. But you then have other players to step up. Colm Basquel was outstanding. Paul Mannion stood up in the final couple of minutes. Dean Rock came off the bench. Paddy Small got a couple of points and obviously got the goal as well. Like, you have players who can step up in big moments when other players don't perform. And I think that was the issue with Kerry yesterday. David Clifford wasn't at his best. I think that goes without saying. Did you have other players to step up? You didn't. And I think that for me was the difference. John Duggan says, Jesus, you could watch Dublin and Kerry every week. Everything on the line. Will miss the championship. We certainly will. We certainly will. And look, having watched the game back, the first half was very poor. No question about it. Lack of quality, both sides looked quite nervous, missing chances. Kerry led by a point at halftime, but like, I think Kerry played very much within themselves in the first half. They didn't take enough risks. They kept the ball for large parts. They played into Dublin's setup, which was to get a lot of men behind the ball and try and nullify the ball going into Clifford and nullify him getting much space on the attack. But that moment of brilliance, Clifford playing the pass into Paul Gainey, what a wonderful moment of brilliance. And it kind of opened up in the second half. But yeah, we will miss the championship. It's been a great year in the championship, in my opinion. Some brilliant games, some huge entertainment. Maybe some people will say with Dublin and Kerry getting to the final, it was a bit boring. But one thing I would say is that I don't think this is like Dublin and Kerry are miles above the rest. Like, I think, you know, the chasing pack of Derry, Mayo, Galway, Tyrone, Roscommon, who you know all those other sides. Forgive me if I'm missing anyone else. Like, I think they're Armagh maybe as well. Like, they're not a million miles away. They're not a million miles away. We've seen that in the semi-finals. Monaghan as well, to be fair, nearly, you know, they put it up to Dublin very, very well. Derry nearly beat Kerry. So I think, you know, I don't think the gap is that big between Dublin and Kerry and everyone else. And to be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me if someone other than Dublin and Kerry won the All-Ireland next year. I think, you know, Derry, Monaghan, Armagh, Mayo, Galway, like all these sides, they're not a million miles away, in my opinion. They have work to do, and they certainly have more work to do probably than Dublin and Kerry, but they're not a million miles away. They're not a million miles away. Jackie Tyrrell says here, defensive masterclass. Mick Fitzsimons just gave on the greatest. He did, and it was an absolute wonderful display by Mick Fitzsimons. Look, in the second half, I do think that Clifford got away from Fitzsimons, and I think Fitzsimons, look, he's been playing since 2010. He's been in the panel a long, long time, and I think like the worry for me with Fitzsimons was that his legs would probably go in the final 10-15 minutes, and Clifford would pull away from him. That was what happened. You know, Clifford did pull away from him and he got numerous chances to score. It was just that Clifford in the end put them wide. You know, Clifford on another day, you know, I think he five chances he missed. He probably scores 3 of them on another day. So that's what, 6 points and, you know, 4 or 5 from play. So, you know, Fitzsimons was outstanding. Don't get me wrong. He did an unbelievable job. And I think to keep Clifford even to 5 or 6 points is a testament to how good of a job Mick Fitzsimons done on Clifford. Yeah, Mick Fitz, like, what a warrior. I think I've been outspoken numerous times, you know, go back 2-3 years ago, look at my match reactions from 2020. I said it back then, he is Dublin's best defender of this era, of this team, of this generation of All-Irelands. He's obviously been there for 9 of them, so he's been there for all of them. Joe Brawley says here, Pat Gilroy wins Waterboy of the Year award. Pat Gilroy winning Waterboy of the Year award. I mean, I wonder, is Joe Brawley going to say that he was, you know, texting Pat Gilroy again and everything else like he often does, and then Pat Gilroy says, I've never heard from Joe Brawley, or, you know, Joe Brawley never texts me or whatever. But, you know, the leadership he obviously brought coming back to the team and everything else, like having obviously been there when we did it in 2011. So remarkable from Pat Gilroy. And yeah, like great to see him have his moment as well. Like an iconic Dublin GA legend without question. Shane Stapleton says Kerry's pain in All-Ireland finals against Dublin continues. Still have not beaten the Dubs on the biggest day since 1985. Yes, remarkable, isn't it? They haven't beaten Dublin in an All-Ireland final since 1985. I think we've beaten them in 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, we've beaten them in 4 All-Ireland finals since then. So it's not been, we've only played in 4 All-Ireland finals since 1985. So it's probably one of them statistics that sounds worse than it actually is. I suppose you'd say 5, obviously, with the replay in 2019 as well, or with the drawn game. But yeah, look, it's one of them things that Dublin just, we haven't lost an All-Ireland final since 1994 as well. We seem, when we get to the final, we just seem to deliver. I think the buzz around the capital, the buzz amongst the fans. Look, Hill 16 does make a huge impact. It does make a huge difference. I've said this before. It does make a huge impact. And it is very tough for other counties to handle that momentum. But look, at the same time, Kerry brought a huge amount of energy to Croke Park yesterday, a huge amount of support. It was you'll see it in the vlog, which should be out later today or tomorrow. Like, they brought a huge amount of fans to Croke Park. And look, it's a tough one to take for Kerry fans. But at the same time, Kerry fans have had their fair share of success. And like, they're not going anywhere. And, they're probably going to be the front runners for next year. And the age profile of the team is very good. You've got Clifford, who's still only 24. Like, Kerry are not going anywhere. And to be honest with you, I would be surprised if this statistic still stands in another couple of years, because Kerry, they're very, like, they just probably need one or two more pieces of the jigsaw, and I think they could go on and be a dominant team in the All-Ireland scene. I really do. Smaller Fish GA says, poor form from the Dublin fans on the hill to boo David Gough when he was congratulated by Larry McCarthy. I thought he had a good game, didn't fall for any prey acting for frees on both sides. Huge call turning his own free on Clifford over, and Dublin went down and scored. Imagine winning and booing the referee. To be fair, because I was surrounded by a lot of Kerry fans, and when his name was rang out, I heard them all boo. Like, I heard visibly a lot of Kerry fans boo David Gough. So when it happened, I was just like, I was quite disappointed, and I was thinking, Jesus, like, why have the Kerry fans booed David Gough? I've watched the game back, and I've noticed that I think the whole stadium booed him, to be honest with you. I think Dublin fans booed him. I think Kerry fans booed. I think both sections of supporters booed him. And yeah, it is quite disappointing. I certainly didn't boo him. Like, to be honest, when you win an All-Ireland, you don't really care. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. So yeah, I thought it was a bit harsh, a bit of a poor touch from those on the hill maybe who did boo him. And I think fans in general who did boo him. At the end of the day, it's an amateur sport. I think he had a very good game. I thought you're always going to get a few decisions wrong. But did he get any decisions wrong that were definitive to the outcome of the game? Not in my opinion. People might say the moment towards the end of the game where Clifford and Fitzsimons tangled, the ref gives a free for Clifford, and then obviously consults with the umpire, overturns it, gives a yellow each way. I've looked at the replay of that on a few occasions, and it looks like it's very hard. It looks like both of them are going at it. Like, Fitzsimons is pulling Clifford, Clifford is pulling Fitzsimons. And I think in the end, the ref has probably made the right decision. Yellow each, throw the ball in. And like, people forget, like, if Kerry had won the ball there, they probably would have got a point, but they didn't win the ball. It wasn't like the free was overturned and given Dublin's way. The ref still threw the ball in. So Kerry still had a chance to do something there. So, I think people are forgetting that side of it as well. But look, yeah, poor form. Like, as I said, when I was in Croke Park, it felt more like Kerry fans booed him, but having watched the game back, it did feel like the whole stadium booed him. And I think, yeah, a little bit disappointing, I think, from both sections of supporters for booing someone. And obviously for Kerry fans, like, when your team loses in a final, you can be very disappointed. You can be very upset. I've been there before, and sometimes as a fan, you can get caught up a bit in the occasion of it, and maybe some fans booed him, and probably in hindsight would look back and think we shouldn't have done that. Fair play to David Gough. Like, it must be like, he was kind of smiling when it happened, but it must be tough. Like you've just refed an All-Ireland final and you're getting booed for it. Yeah, a little bit disappointing. Conor McGregor, remember him? He says, up the Dubs. Probably the first great thing that Conor McGregor. Look at the responses to this tweet are absolutely hilarious, man. Like, what is going on here? What is happening here? Like, oh my goodness me. Party's getting out of hand. Look at this chap. I'd say that was plenty of Dublin fans last night anyway. Buff Egan says, David Gough, a man living and working in Dublin, should not have refed the final. He made massive calls against Kerry in the second half. You'll see me in the response there. But Yeah, look, I quoted this tweet as well and very much said what I said below. Like David got like people like it's mad. Like I think a lot of Kerry fans are probably forgetting that in the Cork game, David Gough gave a quite bizarre decision to give Kerry a penalty when Paul Gainey had been fouled outside the box. And when you look at it, was it a goal scoring opportunity? I'm not too sure that it was. And had that penalty have not gone in the back of the net, would Kerry have won that game? I don't know. Like Kerry were on the ropes against Cork in more ways than one. And people forget they'd already been beaten by Mayo. Had they have lost to Cork, Cork would have been on 4 points. Mayo would have been on 4 points. Kerry wouldn't have been able to have finished top of the group. So the minimum that Kerry would have finished is third. And look, they beat Louth as comfortably as they did. But then they would have had to play, if we're going at the same route that Mayo had, Kerry would have had to play Galway in the qualifiers and Dublin in the All-Ireland quarterfinals. Like, would Kerry have beaten Galway? And look, they probably would have beaten Galway. Would they have beaten Dublin? Dublin just beat them in the final. So, like, I think, if anything, Buff Egan should be thanking David Gough. I think he should be thanking him. He should be saying to David, look, thank you so much for allowing my county to get to an All-Ireland final. Like, I really appreciate you. You're a great man. Fair play, mate. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what I think. Like, look, and I think this whole business, working and living in Dublin, like most referees do live and work in Dublin. Do you know what I mean? Like, because Dublin is it's the capital city of Ireland, and for most counties in Leinster, the working opportunities are in Dublin. To be fair, the rent is absolutely a joke in Dublin, and houses are much cheaper outside of Dublin. So you'd probably nearly be better living outside Dublin and just commuting into Dublin. Like that's what it is, you know. And you look up in Ulster. Most people probably live in the big cities because at the end of the day, that's where the opportunities are. And the same applies in the West, and the same probably applies in the South. And I think at the end of the day, you know, he's working and living in Dublin, but he's from Meath, and Meath are Dublin's big rivals. And that's the thing. If Dublin had a loss yesterday, there would have been a lot of people saying that David Gough should not be reffing, a Meath man should not be reffing Dublin in an All-Ireland final. Do you know that way? It's a bit like, imagine if there was a Cork man reffing the final, you know, like what would Kerry fans say then? So, do you know that way? Like, I think at the end of the day, David Gough, for me, had a decent enough game. He might have got one or two things wrong, but I think, you know, Kerry fans, especially Buff Egan, maybe a few others, they do need to just remember ever so slightly Kerry and Cork in the group stages. Remember that hand that David Gough gave you. So, yeah. GA Juggernaut says here, a lot of people jumping on Clifford's back after the game. As far as I can remember personally, that's the first bad game he's ever had, stretching back to his minor days. He will have better days ahead, but let's not get it twisted. He is the undoubted greatest to ever do it. And that's obviously coming from a Dublin fan, given the crest that is on there. Yeah, look, I mean, is he the GOAT right now? Probably not. Look, I think Peter Canavan, you know, probably a few others, are Colm Cooper maybe, are probably still above him in that conversation. But look, he's on his way to becoming the GOAT, and he certainly is the greatest footballer in the country right now, in my opinion. And look, I think from a David Clifford perspective, like there was so much heat. Like, I believe it or not, I joined the Kerry GA supporters group on Facebook during the week just to try and get a ticket for one of my mates for the game. Like, I was literally just exhausting every opportunity, and I have since left that group now. I can confirm I've withdrawn from the group, but I did see a lot of posts in the group about Clifford, and a lot of people were giving him like nasty abuse. Obviously Kerry fans, and look, a lot of Dublin fans taking the piss as well. Obviously, look, people, it's banter, your criticism, everything else, it happens. Do you know what I mean? Jerry McConnelly, when he's had off days in the past, people have jumped on his back. You know, it's happened with other Dublin footballers down the years as well. You know, I remember Brian Fenton getting a lot of slack in the 19 game, in the drawn game. It happens. You know, people criticise, people dish out banter. At the end of the day, as supporters, you have to be able to take it, because if you're not able to take it, then there's probably no point watching football. And you maybe should go watch another sport. But look, a lot of very poor criticism of David Clifford. And I think, as I said, he owes nothing to nobody. Like, he's been Kerry's best player this year. He's still a front runner for Footballer of the Year after the year that he's had as well, personally. Like, I think a lot of the criticism is very, very unfair. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human. We all have off days. We all have days at work where we're not at our best. And that's what happened with Clifford. And obviously, it's not even his work. It's an amateur game. You know that way? Like, so he's more than allowed to have an off day. And to be fair, you know, he had 8 chances. He scored 3 of them. He missed 5 of them. what I would say is that where was some of the other Kerry forwards? Like Sean O'Shea, I thought was very quiet in the second half. Wasn't really in the game at all. Other players I think went missing. Darren Moynihan wasn't really in it. Paul Gainey gets substituted. I didn't understand that decision. I thought he was probably one of probably Kerry's best forward, I thought, on the day, and one of their best players. Paddy Clifford was outstanding. There was like a lot of Kerry's attack was just very quiet, and even the bench who came on didn't make much of an impact. So I think as much as Clifford doesn't really deserve the criticism, in my opinion, because at the end of the day, he's taking chances on, he's taking those risks. He was trying to grab his team by the scruff of his neck, and look, in the end, it didn't happen. But this is football, this is sport. It does not always go the way you plan it, and sometimes this is life, I suppose. Des Cahill says this is special. When the rest of the Dublin squad had left the field, 3 of their veteran stars strolled to the centre of the pitch for a quiet moment. Michael Fitzsimons, James McCarthy, and Dean Rock. Look, obviously coming onto the pitch, are they taking in Croke Park for one last time? Like, obviously Joanne Cantwell trying to get the trying to get stuff out of the lads. I've seen off the ball, trying to do it earlier as well, trying to see how the lads gonna. I mean, look, they're not going to announce their retirement right there and then. They're obviously going to take time and everything else. Look, I mean, 3 phenomenal players, like 3 absolute legends of Dublin GAA. And look, if either one of them 3 retire, if all 3 of them, if that's their last time, standing out in Croke Park for Dublin, what absolute legends, like absolutely iconic. And I think when it's all said and done, they will be remembered as 3 of the greatest Dublin footballers of all time. I think James McCarthy, I think Stephen Cluxton probably will go down as Dublin's greatest ever footballer. But I think if there's a man to be number 2, I think James McCarthy is that man. Like, what an absolute warrior, what an absolute colossus. And yesterday, he probably didn't have actually his best game yesterday, to be fair. But all year he has been outstanding. And what an absolute warrior James McCarthy is. And same for Mick Fitzsimons and obviously Dean Rock as well, who doesn't start regularly anymore. And to be fair, I listened to Dean Rockin off the ball last night. It was kind of looking like maybe he might be retiring. I think you just get that feeling that that's probably going to happen. If that is the case, absolute legend. Thanks for the memories, because as a Dublin fan, it's been extraordinary watching Dublin this past 10, 15 years or so. Yvonne McKenna says Conor Callahan is the most overrated Gaelic footballer of my lifetime. David Clifford had a horror show and was 10 times as effective today. The idea there's some comparison is remarkable. If we're going to just throw out the king that easy, I'm Sultan McKenna. Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's I suppose Yvonne McKenna does come out with some very over-the-top statements. I think he's quite known for either being very controversial or just not saying anything at all. I think Conor Callahan definitely probably isn't the same player since 2020. He's had a lot of injuries, so let's not forget he's missed a lot of games. He was missing for large chunks of 2021. He was missing for the entirety of last year's league, and then he was he came back in Leinster, but then he was missing in the All-Ireland semi-final and in the quarter-final. So he's been missing a lot of games, and he probably doesn't have that turn of pace. I don't think he's as quick with the ball as what he was a couple of years ago. And his role in the team has probably changed. I think he's a lot more of he's a bit more of a creator now. He's setting up things around them. He's doing a lot of tracking back. He's doing a huge job for the team. Like, there was a moment in the second half where he wins a tackle inside his own 45. And like, seeing Con do that is just brilliant. And I think, to be fair, Conor O'Callaghan is still a legend of this Dublin side. And, he probably isn't the same player as a couple of years ago, but at the same time, I don't think he needs to be, because we have other players who can do that, like Costello, Mannion, Colm Callahan. There's other players who are probably getting the rack of the scores now. And I think Con's job in the side is probably a little bit different. But to say he's the most overrated Gaelic footballer of this person's lifetime, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, I think. Barry Jones says this is quite hilarious. No quarter given. I mean, look at this. Obviously Mick Fitzsimons, Cormac Costello, Lee Gann and all the lads. Getting quite into it there. I mean, you could argue Mick Fitzsimons kept Clifford and Costello quiet by the looks of things there. But I think that shows the mindset probably of the Dublin team going into this game. Like, they were ready for battle, ready for war. And I'd say during training, there was probably a lot of that happening to try and sort of mirror image, going up against a man like Clifford or, and obviously Costello being picked up as well. Like, I think there was a lot of that probably going on during training. And look, Mick Fitzsimons went into that game in the right mindset. Like, he was bang up for it, wasn't he? And, Costello probably didn't have his great game. In fairness, his best game. Did Fitzsimons keep Costello quiet as well? Who knows? But look, Fitzsimons, like, what a warrior, in fairness. And, you can really see the mindset of this Dublin side going into the game, in fairness. Paul Coney says a lot of talk about David Clifford's performance yesterday. One thing you have to admire about him is that he backed himself right to the death. No shying away or passing responsibility. Kept pulling the trigger. Then in itself tells its own tale. For me, he is player of the year. Yeah, look, he didn't shy away. He stood up. And I think that's all you can ask from your big players, is to step up in big moments, to not shy away, to get the ball, to take chances on. And to be fair to Clifford, he did that. Look, it didn't work out, and he's got a lot of unjust abuse on Twitter. Look, you can criticize, you can throw banter as fans and everything else. And, I think, look, players, criticism, constructive criticism is good in life. Like, there's no problem with that. And, Dublin players get criticism, Kerry players get criticism. It's what happens. But obviously you need to kind of, I think, not be over the top with your criticism or throw abuse. And I think it's important to remember the year that Clifford has had and what he's given to Kerry for the last couple of years. He's only human, and at the end of the day, he'll be back. And look, he's only 24, and he's certainly not going anywhere anytime soon, in my opinion. Billy McMahon says Mick Fitzsimons man of the match. Yeah, I thought he was man of the match personally. I thought he was out. Actually, to be fair, I actually thought Colm Callahan probably deserved man of the match. Like, his second half, he dragged Dublin to that All-Ireland, in my opinion. 2 points. He wins the turnover for the goal as well. I thought he was outstanding. But outside of Philly Mack, yeah, I think it was probably outside of Pascal, it was probably Fitzsimons or Mannion. Maybe Mannion ever so slightly deserved it, but look, there was so many colossal warriors in that Dublin team yesterday. Bernard Brogan says here, 3 legends of the game for all time. Absolutely, they will undoubtedly go down as some of the greatest Dublin footballers to have ever played for the county. And last but not least, Joe Coulter says, reminder, David Clifford is still the best Gaelic player on the planet. And you know what? I think we will. I think we'll end it on that note. He still is the best Gaelic footballer on the planet right now. I've, absolutely no doubt about that, in my opinion. Does he win Footballer of the Year? It's a tough one. For me, it's between McCarthy, Pascal, and Clifford. They're my 3 I would go. I think Fitzsimons, like, he's in the conversation as well, isn't he? But the 3 frontrunners for me would be Pascal, McCarthy, and Clifford. I think McCarthy for me would probably, he'd probably be who I'd go for. I think Clifford would be 2. I think Pascal would be 3. But look, we will be going. We will have a show out maybe during the week to review the All-Ireland final in more detail and obviously discuss Team of the Year, Footballer of the Year, a lot of different conversations, and we'll certainly run through a few different bits and bobs. But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Big up the Dubs, big up the All-Ireland win. What a day it was yesterday in the Lower Hogan. Just an incredible occasion. Great to be there. Grateful to be there. Shout out to you lads as well. Without some of you lads subscribing to the channel, leaving comments, I probably wouldn't have had a ticket yesterday, because it was big shout out to Four Masters GA in Coventry. Obviously, was running a bit of a promotion during the week, and they were able to sort me out with a ticket. And to be fair, I wouldn't have got a ticket if I wouldn't have had this YouTube channel, and if you lads weren't subscribing. And I know a lot of you lads entered into that draw as well. So look, I really appreciate all the support, all the comments. I know there's probably a few Kerry fans a little bit bitter following the defeat, and a few bizarre comments, and that email this morning as well, which was crazy. But look, at the end of the day, even if your comments negative, I still appreciate the comments and the support and everything else. And look, the All-Ireland season's wrapped up, but we won't be going anywhere anytime soon. As I said, we're going live tomorrow with one of the lads to review the All-Ireland final, discuss Footballer of the Year. There will be a vlog out later today, if not tomorrow, of the Dublin and Kerry game. Some brilliant footage at that, by the way. And definitely, even if you're a Kerry fan, you might want to watch it. But it's still great footage, I think, and a very, very good. It's definitely going to be one of the better vlogs I've done. And yeah, we'll have plenty of content coming out over the next couple of days. Camogie final next Sunday, ladies football final in 2 weeks, Dublin and Kerry again. So look, we'll have plenty to discuss still plenty to talk about. Club championships coming into the mix now as well. Very, very excited about them. So yeah, leave a like, subscribe. My name is Aaron, and I will speak to you all soon.